Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Celtic Unrestricted View podcast. My name is Ryan Clifford, and we're going to have a guest podcast for this episode. And join me in this episode is JP once again. This episode, JP, I'm really looking forward to it. It's a new book, and it's an author, Phillp Vine, who's on with us today. We are getting a wee bit of exclusive on his book, and which obviously Phillip will tell us about more into detail into the podcast. But JP, I'm looking forward to this, knowing about his obviously stories about Celtic and his job as an author as well, mate.
Yeah, mate, it's going to be very good. I'd like to thank Phil for coming on to speak to us today. It's an honour to be sitting here and listening to these kind of stories. Toby's in with what we love, because we love chatting about Celtic anyway. So this kind of Toby's into what we love to do, because we could talk Celtic 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I don't think there's enough days in the week for us to cover. And yeah, as I say, I'm really looking forward to this. I obviously like Phillip kick off and actually tell us as to why he's here today.
Right. Well, thanks, guys, for welcoming me. It's lovely to see you because we're doing this on Zoom. And yeah, I'm here because I'm very excited. My publisher's Pitch Publishing. I've just published a week or so ago a book that is about the love of my life, which is Celtic Football Club. My wife is in the house, but she'll understand. The book's called The Immortals. And the subtitle is Two Nines and Other Celtic Stories. I'm a fiction writer originally, and so the two books that I've written on football are really built around telling stories. And if you read my book and you don't want to turn the page, then I've failed. The subtitle, Two Nines and Other Stories, tells you that it's a series of stories about Celtic. Which, as I said, is the love of my life, my football life anyway, and started out with a not very original idea to celebrate Celtic's 10 in a row. And I kept a journal and diaries and made notes and started the book. And even when it was going wrong, I still thought we were going to do the 10 in a row. And then we all know what happened. I went into a period of severe mourning because it was incredible that it didn't happen. It really was, wasn't it? I then thought about the book and it gave me the opportunity to refocus. And so what I've produced is a quirky history of Celtic Football Club. And the motivation was really some light in amongst the darkness. It suddenly occurred to me that Celtic still held all the bragging rights. We had two nines in a row, and the team from the other side of the city only had one nine in a row. So that was the focal point of restarting the book. I suppose about 2/3 of the book is focused on those two nine in a row sequences. But then I talk about, I went right back to the origins of Celtic. I'm a very political guy, and so I was very attracted not just by Celtic football, but by the whole culture of Celtic Football Club, the Catholicism, and I've been a Catholic for 35 years. I'm not anymore, but obviously once a Catholic, always a Catholic. Mm-hmm. I'm not Irish, I'm English, but I have a great sympathy with Irish history, and particularly the origins of Celtic, of course, are to be found in the Irish Holocaust of 1845 to 50, when some estimates reckon that 6 million Irish people were killed, really. It's not an accidental famine. It's deliberate English imperialism. So I'm rambling and I'm ranting about politics. we can get back to football if you like, Ryan and JP. But I've had my say. Thank you very much. It's a brilliant book, by the way. I hope you believe me. Hope you'll read it.
No, honestly, it's the fact you've come on and you're telling us your story about it, Phillip. It's really good for us to know about more about history, obviously, about yourself and Celtic and the book as well. It's true what Phillip says, JP, that obviously that we were all mourning from the 10. Let's be fair here. We were all a bit disappointed, but true what Phillip says, you take away that one defeat. The last 20 odd years, it's been, let's be fair, very, very dominant for Celtic, and I don't think people kind of go back to that. I think they realise because you've lost a 10, or that's it, you've lost the 10, you've lost a 9 through obviously the 90s, but over the last 20, 25 years, Celtic have been the dominant force, JP.
Yeah, it's funny you say that obviously we were all mourning. I've actually tried to forget, Phillip, that, you know, we lost the 10. But Ryan, on the other hand, keeps reminding me of the fact that we lost the 10. So it's been pretty good that he's been keeping me up to date with the fact that we actually did lose it. I tried to forget it. So, but Ryan seems to be doing a good job of not letting me do that. But no, listen, that season is probably one of the flukiest seasons any other team could possibly have had. If you look at the season as a whole, right, the team across the water, who they went undefeated the whole season. And then you had the team up in Perth, St Johnstone, winning the 2 cups. Everything that could have went wrong for Celtic went wrong for Celtic that season. Everything. In terms of recruitment. You look at recruitment from the club. You look at decision-making from the club. You look at the noise level from the club. And I mean, when I say noise level, I mean the noise level right at the beginning of pre-season. It started off with one of the players coming back. There was a big story in the paper about him being unfit. He was left out the squad to travel to do the pre-season. You know, one of the other players, Lee Griffiths, yeah, that became a big hullabaloo. Now, what was made of that, obviously, was what was made of that. We will never understand the P's and Q's and everything else that took place in amongst that. But then, on the other hand, you had Bolly Golly, who decides to bugger off over to Spain for a day or two, not tell anyone at the club, in the midst of a pandemic where protocols and rules and regulations are in place that you're not allowed to do that because of you have to be there for regular COVID testing and everything else. And it was just a complete, and excuse my language, a complete shit show from the off at that beginning of that season. So to begin with, Celtic were then put back because I think what it was it 10 days we had to wait before we were even able to play another fixture, whereas the team across the water were able to build momentum. They were allowed to build momentum in terms of playing their games, winning their games, and then we were playing catch up from the beginning. And then after that, you could take us right up till January, not to mention the fact that we've dropped quite a lot of points. We then go to January, and the club, for whatever reason, found it was a great idea for the club, who haven't done that well, to disappear over to Dubai for a winter warm weather training camp, where, again, in my opinion, were hung out to dry and scapegoated after that decision was taken. So what had happened was they got everything all signed, paperwork all done, and everything was cool. They were to go and do their visit to Dubai. They were over in Dubai 2 days. I think it was a day and a half, 2 days. And then the Scottish government decided to change all the ruling on what was to happen in terms of travel and everything else. And then you started to see pictures appearing in the media of Neil Lennon and the Celtic players running about the pool, and it was kind of portrayed as a jolly boys outing. It just didn't bode well, and it really, really unsettled the whole club as well as the fans. that's the most important part for me, Phillip, there as well. The fans weren't allowed in to see their team either. So there was a lot of unrest. The relationship between the club and the fans had sort of started to deteriorate very, very slowly. And things just weren't going well. So as I say, it wasn't just one or two small things that season. It was a combination of a very, very few decisions that, that compiled the season we had that season. But Ryan, to be honest, I think the book, obviously, with the title and obviously the name, tells you everything that obviously that Celtic stand for. And to win 9 in a row, not just once, but twice, is a remarkable achievement by any club, no matter what league you play in, all over the world.
Is that
and not just that, and between all that, we have won 4 trebles back to back. I don't think any other club has done that.
No. There's a section at the back of the book, JP, where I look at these astonishing record-breaking feats. I mean, the 4 trebles will never be beaten. I don't think 2 9s will be beaten either, but you can always hope. But I thought you said you'd forgotten it all. You obviously remember every detail.
I remember every bit. I did try and forget about it, Phillip, but I kind of seem to retain knowledge even when I don't want to.
You're right about the fans. I remember seeing a picture, because obviously I wasn't there, but the Green Brigade put up a sign outside the training ground, and it said, "Be there for us. We're here for you." And I can't remember which the next match was, but they bloody well weren't there.
Sure, it was Rangers.
Was it Rangers?
Sure,
yeah,
it was.
I mean,
Sure, it was.
I think it says, "Be in. We're out here for you. Be in there for us."
That's exactly right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I thought that it was kind of symbolic somehow. You've got the chain link fencing and the fans outside, and I know that the fans can't join in with the training, but it was a bit symbolic that, and there was too many players. I mean, too many players just let us down. I mean, the season before that, the French striker. Tell me his name, because I'm
Edward.
Sorry,
Hodgson Edward.
Yeah, Hodgson. I mean, Hodgson was sublime the season before, but I mean, he couldn't give a shit, to put it crudely. And I wanted him to stay. I desperately wanted him to stay, but in retrospect, we should have let him go, and we should have probably let the other malcontents go as well. Chris Iyer wanted to go. I think he played his heart out through the season. And Cham was not there at all, in the same way that Edouard wasn't there.
Worse than a man down, Phillip.
Sorry?
And Cham was worse than a man down.
Absolutely, yeah. It was difficult because, as I said, I wanted them all to stay. The board did what the fans wanted at that point, but in retrospect, I think we've got to remember that bad season because there were so many mistakes that, and there's a chapter on it in the book, I call the blame game. And, do you blame the directors? Do you blame the players? Both, I guess. But the one set of people you can't blame is the incredible fans.
I think what's key to that, Ryan, is, as Phillip says, the blame game. I think it's quite astonishing, actually, that Neil Lennon has still to this day refusing to accept his part to play in the downfall of that season. He just seems to be, when he left Celtic, before obviously now he's over in Cyprus, now being the manager of Omonia, but when he left Celtic, he seemed to be chomping at the bit to go on all these media podcasts and everything else, but he was pointing fingers at everybody else instead of looking deep within and saying, do you know what, I was in charge of that, so I should have done things a wee bit differently. I should have made other decisions that didn't bring the rest of the club into disrepute. It was the fact that he just, and then his presser, when we came back from Dubai, I mean, that was borderline embarrassing. And then it was after that we tried to sign, he's now over at Rangers, we tried to sign the lad Ben Davis. And I have never seen a manager ever in my life turn round and say these words in a press conference. Yeah, we got gazumped for that player, and now he's with Liverpool. I couldn't believe it. It was beyond beggars belief. I was sitting going like that. This isn't Neil Lennon. This isn't the guy that has the passion and the fight and everything about him. He looks as if he's just gave in. And that was months before he was then relieved of his duties.
I don't know. I don't know what you feel, Phil.
There was just a lot of unrest that just, he just has refused for some reason to take the blame.
Yeah, there were early signs, weren't there? There was a press conference fairly early on where he laid into the players and said that some players didn't want to be there.
That was another one, yeah.
I mean, I thought at the time, and I think I wrote in the book, what planet was Lenny on? Because it's not the sort of thing you say. But then obviously he got hauled up before the board and was told to retract, which he did, didn't he? But I mean, I still love Lenny. I mean, I think he's for me, he'll always be a Celtic legend, and it was such a shame what happened. I think it's just a lesson of not hanging on to players that don't have the heart and soul of the club.
For me,
I think as well, Phillip, he made a comment about if things weren't going the way he wanted it to go, then he would look at the club's best interest and he would take his sale away from that equation. He didn't do that though. He stayed on beyond. We could see very early on. Rangers beat us 2-0 at Celtic Park that day. We never registered a shot at target the whole game. In my opinion, that is a very early sign of things aren't going well for you.
Yeah, it was appalling. Yeah, I mean, that performance was probably the worst.
Not to mention that Fenwick Barros turned us over in the Champions League qualifier as well, early on in the season.
Well, I mean, to be positive, we've now got an absolutely extraordinary manager.
Yes.
I mean, losing 3 games out of 6 at the beginning of last season, you couldn't have made it up. So I was waiting with the book. I had to wait until the championship last season was secure, and then I wrote the last chapter. And I was just so delighted to be able to write that last chapter. So we've returned to equilibrium and way beyond equilibrium, and it's like a miracle, really.
For me, on Neil Lennon, I've kind of looked back at a bit now, and obviously he's got to take responsibility, but I don't believe it was all him. The fact that every single player was poor tells you something's not right behind the scenes at that time of what happened. I know Edward was poor, but he still got a lot of goals, but he was poor. At the transfer window, we all thought it was a good window. If you looked at the window through experience and the way the guys came in, the players were quality players, the quality pass, they were decent players, we kept our stars. You're thinking, just go on and win the league, because the year before, I still believed that, I know COVID was a bad thing for a lot of people and a lot of families, but in terms of football, it stopped Gerrard getting sacked. It stopped their momentum. We were flying. We were going to Rangers, I think, 13, 12 points ahead. I still believe it would have been 20-odd points that season because Rangers were in downfall. Celtic were very, 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 very flying high, and I generally thought that we were doing well. And I think we did win the treble anyway. So I do believe that lessons have been learned, Phillip, like you says. Lessons have been learned, but Andrew's come in, and I think Andrew's kind of corrected those lessons, and he's fixed behind the scenes, and the board are very trusting of him. And I don't know if that's in the book in terms of his signings and how he's come in and changed Celtic.
Well, I'll say I've added the chapter one before the end about Ange, and I mean I'd never heard of him, but I looked at his record and I thought, this guy's hot. You only had to Google Wikipedia and see what the guy had done, and I think it was a case of the players then buying into his methods, which took a little bit of time. But I mean, it's been wonderful since about this time last year. I mean, on on the season before, Celtic were playing some fabulous stuff when the season was halted, and I know some of the Rangers fans were talking about having an asterisk against the title, and I've written a lot in the book about the Rangers' financial problems, you know, the bankruptcy, the elimination of the old club, really. And so, where am I rambling to? I'm rambling to the point that if Rangers want one asterisk against that one title that was ended by COVID, you've got to put about 10 asterisks against all the seasons when Rangers were bloated with all that money that they had no right to. I mean, I had to moderate what I wrote because at one point, in the original draft, I had a list of all the players and all the management at Ibrox that had gained from the tax evasion.
Right.
And I had to change it from tax evasion to tax avoidance, but we all know it was criminal activity. And I've been as strong as I can be without the lawyers saying, no, you just can't say that. And the reason I've included the bit about the Rangers bankruptcy was precisely because of that. You know, I'd be happy to have an asterisk against the COVID season, but there's got to be a whole string of asterisks against those. And some of those titles that the Rangers won in that period were so close. You know, last minute games, goal difference, goal average, goal difference. They were really close. So, you know, I feel that the criminal behaviour really gained them lots of titles, and it still makes me angry now, as you can see. But so that's all highlighted in the. You know, in a sense, you can't write a book about Celtic without also writing about the Rangers, because you mean they're like twins, aren't they? And there's the evil twin and the good twin, and you know, people say to me, well, you're biased. But I say, well, yeah, okay, I'm a bit biased, but you have got a well-run club since Fergus McCann came in and saved us, basically. Ever since then, Celtic have been a well-run football club with basically good leadership, coming, you know, with good results emerging. And across the river, you've got criminals, and you've got guys on the board there that are convicted fraudsters. It's quite extraordinary, the makeup of the Rangers board, but you know, maybe we won't go there.
And how ironic was it, Phillip, that the old Rangers should be shut down by green and white?
Well, I mean, you see. To me, they wanted it both ways. They wanted the continuity of history. They wanted to keep all their titles, all their history. But when it came to paying the back tax they owed, they said, oh, no, that was the old company. And so it's sort of hypocrisy, isn't it?
Yeah, you're still hearing that from them now.
Sorry?
You're still hearing things like that from them now. When you speak to their fans, it's, well, that's nothing to do with us. That was, you know, so it's the old Rangers whenever it suits you.
Yeah,
but whenever we bring up that you're a new club and everything else, no, we've still got all our history, we've still got this, you can't have your own cake and eat it as well, you know. So it's, we know that the thing is we don't live in a deluded bubble. We know reality and we know the truth. It's this, unfortunately, it's over the other side of Glasgow that seem to have the trouble retaining that truth and believing it. So there's kind of two different things here.
There's a history here, JP, isn't there? See, because again in the book I go back and you look at the early part of the 20th century, and I mean that's when things went wrong for Rangers, because they got in financial trouble around about 1912, 1913, and the Belfast shipbuilders came over, and they brought their employment practices with them, loaned Rangers some money on the condition that Rangers only only employed Protestants. But you've got a whole, the dominant forces within Scottish society in those early years of the 20th century were, I mean, the press, the politicians, even the Scottish Church. I mean, there's an extraordinary report by the Scottish Church, I think 1923, where they're complaining about the Scottish nation being diluted by Irish nationals and Catholics. And of course, the Scottish football authorities too were alarmed, weren't they, at the dominance of Celtic and Hibernian. And so you've had this whole thread of history, and it does go right up to today, I think.
Yeah.
You know, you mentioned, JP, the differential treatment of Celtic and Rangers over the COVID issues.
That was massive, Philip. I don't know if you've listened to any of the episodes, Philip, but we just try and tell the truth. Obviously, we're Celtic fans and we're biased, but especially in terms of referees and the media, I firmly believe that there's a big agenda against Celtic in Scotland. Anytime Celtic play well, it's always Celtic struggled to win and Rangers triumphed, last-minute winners. And listen, obviously, I try and look at things balanced as I can. Obviously, there's a bit of bias in everybody who supports a team, but I generally believe that obviously you're doing a book about it and you need to write the truth, because in a book, you can't write the truth because people say stuff. So what you're writing is the truth, and it's got to be the truth. So, and like you say, if it's not, you'll have people chatting about your lawyers, etc. So, but I do believe, Philip, that what you're saying is correct, that there's always a thing against Celtic, and obviously in your book you mentioned that. So I'm glad you've highlighted that as well, because the fact you put it in your book for me tells that it did happen. Again, I'm not born in the days, but the fact that I can listen about it, read about it, obviously as well on your book. So I do believe you're right that there is a big agenda in terms of Celtic and Scottish football.
I mean, agenda's the right word, I think. Yeah, there's a,
and that's putting it politely.
A hidden agenda. Yeah.
And that's,
yeah, I mean, I talk about.
It's not like you, Ryan. It's not like you be putting it politely.
Sorry?
I'm just saying to Ryan, it's not like him, Philip, to be putting it politely.
Well, yeah, well, we best be a bit polite, I think. But one of the interesting things about I've done 2 books for Pitch Publishing, which is I think the leading independent sports publisher in Britain, and I'm really proud of them and to be part of it. But the other book I wrote was called Visionary. It's no, that one will do. It's the story of the aborted takeover of Manchester United by Michael Knighton, who's appeared in the news again as heading up a consortium to get the Glazers out. My rambling point is that you cannot write in books what you can write in a newspaper. And I presume it's because newspapers are tomorrow's fish and chip paper, and books are somehow solid. But I've been astonished in both my books at the stuff I've had to cut out, because the legal bods say you can't say that, and you have to use the word allegedly sometimes. But I believe, I mean, the publishers believe in what I'm saying. They've just got to find a way of a manner of words that doesn't get them in legal shit. So I've tried to be as strong as I can. Again, I don't believe that my book, The Immortals, is your average type of football book. That may be, you know, maybe some people reading it might be disappointed. You know, it's not just a benign, banal recitation of all the good things that Celtic have done. It's a kind of, I hope it's a provocative book that makes people think, makes them stop and question themselves and question the club sometimes. So, what I'm saying is I can't write a book that's just about football. For me, it's got to be about politics and culture in Scotland and in the UK in general. It's got to be about history and provocative things, telling the truth, really. I mean, my original my Manchester United book called Visionary, it was originally going to be called The Truth Game because I wanted to tell the truth. Anyway, but yeah, so that's what I've tried to do in this book, The Immortals, just tell the truth. And as I say, I've been as hard-hitting as I can be.
See, obviously during the 29 in a rows that you're writing about, is there any favourite players or games that stands out? And if you wrote about them in the book at all?
Yeah, I mean, you very kindly, Ryan, sent me some possible questions you were going to ask. And so I thought about this. And for me, when I'm choosing favourite players, there's always a bit of a dilemma because I believe I'm a bit of a plodder. I work hard, and in the end, you get a bit of success, maybe, if you're lucky, if you get a good break. But I'm a bit of a plodder, and so I kind of like the determined, loyal one club men, the hard men, if you like. And I tell you what I would love if I could go back in a time machine. I would love to see Jock Stein playing for Celtic, and I would love even more, I think, to see Sean Fallon playing for Celtic, because they were hard men. And there's a wonderful book about Sean Fallon. I don't know the author, but his name's Stephen Sullivan, and the book is titled Sean Fallon, Celtic's Iron Man. And I tell you, I was almost in tears by the end of that book. Sean Fallon to me is a great hero. And of course, you know, we're talking about these hard men, these almost one club men. And that's really why I like Lenny too, because, you know, when he was a player, he gave everything. He wasn't the most talented player you've ever seen, but he gave it all. And obviously Scott Brown, you know, those sort of players. But on the other side, I will get to my point, you've got the footballing geniuses, haven't you? And who doesn't love a genius? So you've got Jinky Johnston. I saw him play live in a charity match up at Carlisle United. I was club secretary there for a while. And it was magical just seeing him. He was obviously way past his best, and it was only a charity match. But it was wonderful just to see him in the flesh as opposed to on the films. And then when I lived up in Glasgow, Charlie Nicholas, another sort of wayward genius. But, and I'm coming to answer your question now, there's a small handful of players that combine the self-discipline, the determination, and the genius. Now, if you're with me, I'll just tell you my favourite player of all time's got to be Henrik Larsson. He wasn't hard like Steen or Fallon or Lennon or Brownie, but, you know, he had everything for me. I mean, obviously the footballing genius is more obvious perhaps than the determination. But he's still a Celtic man, and he gave the best years to Celtic Football Club. God, am I feel blessed to have seen Larsson, and sometimes live, sometimes on video, but he's just a genius. Now, you guys, you tell me who your favourite player
On
is.
that, JP, but I'll put to you, JP, but Phillip says there, he's mentioning Fallon, Jinky, Jock Stein. Larsson's probably our equivalent to that. He's probably our immortal.
Yeah.
I love guys like Gary Hooper, Petrov, Lambert. I'd probably say even Edward to me, he's not an immortal, but I loved Edward. I thought on his game, he's one of the best strikers we've had in a long, long time. I probably say he was probably the best finisher. I know Hooper for me was phenomenal, but I thought Edward was probably the closest finisher to Larsson, and he was one of the guys, similar to Jota, I don't know. As soon as you get the ball, you stood up, you thought, he's got to do something. Yeah. But for me, JP, I'm probably the same as Phillip. I don't want to say Larsson because obviously Phillip says him, but take away Larsson, who would you pick? I know you're probably going to say Larsson, JP, but obviously you've seen guys like Mistay. I've not seen Mistay live. I was only born, so I know I'm making sure that I'm dead young. I'm 28, but I've not seen guys like me staying that in the flesh. But who would you say, JP, with the guys you, or the main guy you thought's your hero at Celtic?
Who's like immortal in my years of supporting Celtic? Well, McStay definitely for me was just a genius. I've not heard anybody talk about Paul McStay badly. Not just as a footballer, but as a person as well. And players he's played against. I watched a thing recently, and it was Derek McInnes. And Derek McInnes was a young boy coming through. McStay was kind of getting on a bit, and he says that they came up to play. It was like a youth game, and McStay was playing with the Celtic reserves on his way back for injury at the time. And he says he totally schooled him. He's laughing at him. He said, I remember looking at my colleagues at the time and going, I am miles off this, miles away for this guy. And this guy was coming back for injury. And I've never heard anybody speak about Paul McStay, as I say, badly. But for me, McStay was just a total genius. With the ball, without the ball, he just knew where to be, picked up great areas. He was brilliant on the void, some crack. He had a right good dig on him as well. He could shoot. I think there was a period of time Juventus had inquired about him. I think the fee was going to be somewhere in the regions of 7.5 to 8 million. Now, equivalent nowadays, that you're looking at 50 million maybe. Away back then, that was a lot of money. And he decided to stay at Celtic for whatever reason, I don't know, but he decided that his time was much served better at Celtic. But not just McStay. There has been a few Immortals. I remember the excitement of seeing Di Canio, Cadet and Van Hooijdonk together. I don't think there has been a specific trio that has made you feel that excited. I mean, you used to have goosebumps in the stadium when you saw the three of them play together. They were that exciting. You knew something was going to happen. We've got that now in terms of Jota, Kyogo, Abada. They bring that sort of like vibe now. Even Giakoumakis, when he's playing, you just know something's going to happen for us. But obviously, I'm not going to say Henrik because Henrik's everybody's favourite. I don't think there's a Celtic fan out there that can't say, even though he was, in my opinion, he was a king. But just watching those guys apply their trade at the club. John Collins was a brilliant player as well. It was just a shame how things materialised in the end with John Collins in terms of his playing days, to keeping Tommy Burns in the dark of what he was doing, and then before you know it, he was going to Monaco. But no, and then you move up the years, and you get guys like Alan Thompson. Now, Alan Thompson's got the best left foot. I've said it. We've spoke to Alan ourselves, right? I told him, in my opinion, he's got the best left foot I've ever saw in Scottish football. And I've got that opinion still to this day. With guys like Nakamura who've got a different type of flair and quality, Lubo Moravcik. So, in my opinion, there's more than just one guy that I would say stands immortal. But I want to, just before we bring Phillip back in, I want to actually just say this as well. These guys don't become immortal unless they've got guys like Paul Lambert, Neil Lennon, guys in the team beside them, like Tom Boyd, Jackie McNamara. These guys have all been great servants to Celtic as well. It's not just about the guys who stand, out there on a pedestal on their own. In my opinion, they've got to have teammates and good teamwork round about them in order to make them become what they become. But they certainly do have that wee niche and that bit of quality that they're able to take themselves on a level in football and stand alone differently from just your average Joe on the pitch. So I've not just got one favourite, Ryan, but I do have a broad spectrum of luxury there that I've been able to see every one of those guys I've mentioned live in more than one occasion.
I think for me, in terms of just being no, just a bit. For me, I think he's very, very, very underrated. Not just by some Celtic fans, by Scottish football, and I think by the world football. To be fair, Kieran Tierney spoke about him the other day, saying that he's the best player I've ever played with. He's played with guys like Odegaard, Aubameyang, Lacazette now. So for me, the more I look back at my Celtic my Celtic fan spectrum, for me, Scott Brown's got to be up there. Just in terms of not just his leadership, and not just in terms of what he's won as a footballer, the guy was brilliant. People who, for the other side of the city and the Scottish media, they don't like the fact that Scott Brown didn't want to go to Spurs, didn't want to go to Newcastle. There were concrete interest, and I think there were bids for Newcastle and Spurs. He's come out and says that
Crystal Palace nearly took him.
He says there was interest for down south all through my time at Celtic, but I thought, no, why would you want to leave here? I've got a massive club, I've got brilliant players with me, brilliant managers, brilliant fans. I'm in Champions League, European football every year. I'm fighting for trophies. Basically, for what I'm getting, why would you want to go to mediocrity? Basically, that's what I'm getting from him. For me, Phillip, in terms of immortal in this day and age, Larsson, yes, but in terms of the full immortal and my favourite player, when I look back at things now, in terms of everything Celtic stands for, I would say it was Scott Brown, Phillip.
That's really interesting. I remember a couple of years ago, maybe 3 years ago, I read an article, and Scott Brown's passing success rate was top of the list, and that was compiled with all of the top European clubs. I guess Celtic were in the Europa League at the time.
It was
it was the
Champions League season, Phillip, when Rodgers was there. It was when he was at when Scott Brown was phenomenal.
Yeah, I mean, Scott Brown, fantastic. Yeah, and you're all right. And JP, you said about none of these players become immortal without the support cast around them. I mean, the other thing that I thought of, Ryan, when you talked about Odsonne Edouard, I mean, from the moment I saw him, I was telling everybody that would listen, I was boring them silly about this genius of a man that Celtic had managed to sign, who was better at a young age than Kylian Mbappe. And I think the problem is with being a football fan sometimes is that you love your club so much and you love the players. And therefore, it's a bit like falling in love with another human being, isn't it? You know, you commit, and then when they let you down, it's hard. So, having loved Edouard so much, you know, I thought, yeah, for me, he was the nearest thing to Larsson. And I think, you know, had he stayed, he might have been even better. But obviously, he was going to go. But I felt so let down. It's a bit like being betrayed by a lover, you know. I do. Maybe that's over the top, but
well, what's your thoughts?
That's why we feel down when we're let down, isn't it? It's why we felt let down by the 10 in a row season.
Yeah.
Because we knew that they were better than that. They owed us, the fans, some kind of loyalty.
But on that, Phillip, before JP, sorry mate, accepting, on that Edouard thing, I know Dembele for me was phenomenal as well, but you kind of knew Dembele was only here for a season or two. You knew he was going to go. I said when Edouard signed for £9 million, I thought it was an absolute bargain. I did at the time. People were saying £9 million, a lot of money. He's hardly, and I was like, if Brendan Rodgers says he's one of the best boys he's ever worked with at that age, then you need to trust the manager. He's with him every day. And for me, JP, like Phillip says, I do believe that Edouard could have been a record breaker at Celtic if he stayed, but we all know these guys at that type of the culture, the French, they're here for a few years and they're going to go. Because let's be fair, he's not a Celtic man. He's here to progress his career in a stepping stone, shall I say.
Yeah, well, that's it, mate. He was a total craftsman at his job. When he scored in his debut, he came on against Hamilton and scored. I can't think of a better start to endear yourself to the Celtic fans in order to come on and do something like that. If it's not scoring one, then it could be scoring a hat-trick or whatever it may be. But it was different class. I think what sort of endeared them even more to the Celtic fans is that the Ibrox when we went down to 10 men, when Jozo Simunovic decided to fling an elbow at Alfredo Morelos, and he was sent off for it. And then obviously Edward get brought on as a sub, when, in my opinion, it was probably the most gutsy tactic I've ever saw in my life, because normally you would see a striker coming off. And Rodgers showed full belief in his team to throw on an extra striker to keep them belly on the pitch at the same time and have a go at them, knowing fine well that, you know, deep down we had the beating of them. When most managers would have retracted from that and went the other way and kind of tried to go defensively just to not end up losing the game. And then obviously the rest is history, as you said. He cuts in and he finds that far post, and then runs away celebrating. And then after that, he just got better and better and better. And you could see, in my opinion, you could see very early on with Edward that he was a talent, a huge talent at that. And deep down, you know, when these guys come to Celtic, you know we're not going to hold on to them. Not in today's modern game. They're just too good. And then he did it in Europe as well. He scored against Rosenborg in the Champions League qualifiers, Europa qualifiers. He was scoring against teams like Leipzig, and so it's not as if he shied away from that scale. He stood out when it mattered. He became a big game player for Celtic, and he rose to the occasion time and time again. He went to Ibrox, he was scoring goals. He'd score in the cup for us. He would score a lot of important goals. But in my opinion, I've kind of not forgotten about him, but it's been made sort of easy for a transitional process for that to happen. Now I've got wee Kyogo, and I think wee Kyogo brings to Celtic what Larsson used to bring to Celtic. Sometimes Celtic might not be in a game for 70, 80 minutes, but we've got Kyogo now. So what happens is with that movement, ferociousness, speed, power, the running energy that Kyogo brings to the team, and his finishing ability, similar to Larsson. And I think he displayed it that day against Hibs in the final last season, when that ball for Callum McGregor, his first touch was unbelievable to set himself and then score. And then when Rogic plays that free kick very quickly, it goes over the top. You actually see Kyogo scanning, and you see him having a look to see. He knows the goalkeeper. He's well aware that Matt Macy is off that line, and he just lifts it right over the top of him. And nobody else in the stadium knew where the ball was going apart from Kyogo, because he starts his run early towards the corner where Ralston and Stephen Welsh are out warming up. But no, in my opinion, the wee man is absolutely phenomenal. And I think he brings to Celtic now what Larsson used to bring. You can feel the energy in the stadium, Phillip, now. When Kyogo has been announced, with when the teams get announced and it's on the big screen, as soon as it lights up Kyogo, there is a roar for this. Jota's now got that as well. He's got that there, but Kyogo's roar seems to be that wee bit louder, and I think it's because of the way he is. Now, there's a lot of people up here still saying, he's not scored against them across the water. He's not. Nonsense. That will come, because he's too good a player not to. He plays on that shoulder. His movement is so ferocious. The way they're playing just now, I wouldn't be surprised if he scored 2 against them next Saturday. A week on Saturday coming. But I think Kyogo is very, very, very similar in terms of what Larsson used to bring to Celtic in terms of his movement, his game awareness, his tactical play, and obviously now his goals that he's returning.
Yeah, to be fair, I never expected Edward to stay, but I did expect him to try in that last season.
Yeah.
Basically Celtic's model is to buy young talent, to develop young talent, to buy it when necessary, and to sell on. We all know that. And basically, unless you do that, young talented players won't come to Celtic. So it's an unfortunate necessity. But interesting what you're saying about Kyogo. I love Giacomakis too.
I'm the same.
The last time my wife Liz and I were at Celtic Park was last season when he scored a hat-trick against Dundee. And of course, we had the overhead kick recently. I mean, I think that I'd love to see the manager find a way of having them both on the pitch at the same time. But you know, we can't argue with Ange at the moment. But I would love to see them both on the pitch.
I would. I'm a big fan of Jack and Marcus. I'm a big fan of Kyogo as well. I think the two of them are. I believe we've got two. I don't want to say world class strikers as yet, but I believe I've got two top draw strikers at Celtic. Maeda's very good, but I'm touch and go on his full scale ability. I believe his running power and his pace helps him a lot. But when you look at his assist record, I think he's 74 assists. 70 assists every 74 minutes or something roughly. So again, I don't think he's a poor player. I think he's vital to what we do. But in terms of Jack and Marcus Kyogo, I think they're brilliant. I think they're by far the two best strikers in Scotland. I believe that it wouldn't surprise me if they've a good Champions League or a good season in Scotland again, that there's suitors for them. And again, we'll need to hang fire and stick tight and not be penny pinching from English teams and teams abroad. We need to stand straight and just say it's 20 million pound for our left ball. It's 20 million pound for our left sack. Until that's when we start talking. We've got to actually be proactive and look for the best deals we can for our best players, and we don't want to sell players, but we don't want like Edward. Sorry, Phillip, to cut in there, but like you say with Edward, you don't want to sell your players, but there's a ceiling, and when you do sell them now, we've got to look at it as a club. When do you cash in? Because like the other side of the city, I don't believe there's any bids for Morelos. I don't think there's been any interest. There might be interest, but there's a big difference between interest and bids. It's a big difference. Interest is inquiries, a bids, there's money on the table. And for me, don't think that's happened for them. And now look at them now. He's struggling. They're not going to get the £18 million that we're talking about for him, or £10 million. I don't think they'll get that for them. So it just shows you, Phillip, sometimes you need to cash in when the iron's hot.
Well, if you look at Morelos and Giacomakis, the big difference is, first of all, inability. I really believe that. But secondly, and almost as important, perhaps more important, is the attitude. Giacomakis has not started a game, and as far as I know, he's not made one peep of complaint. Morelos has thrown his toys out of the pram yet again. But yeah, one of my bugbears, Scottish football is so undervalued in terms of the quality that there is up there, and therefore the financial. I was at Cambridge United last night. They were playing in the English Football League Cup against Southampton, and I always watch Stuart Armstrong and Mohamed El Yunusi playing for Southampton, and I think to myself, yeah, they played a lot of times between them for Celtic, but they were never automatic first choices, were they? And yet they go down and they play in the Southampton first team week after week, and they went for a song. You know, Celtic have got to, they've got to cash in at the right time, but Kieran Tierney, I believe, should have been sold for much more.
Oh, massively.
25 million, that's criminal. And if we ever have to, which we will have to cash in, I guess, on Kyogo and Giacomakis probably too, we've got to get the right price. Sorry, it just pisses me off, because I watch a lot of Scottish football on TV, and okay, the standard below Celtic, Rangers and Hearts drops off, but the top teams in the Scottish Premiership have some fabulous footballers, mostly Celtic, obviously, but you know, it's undervalued, and I think there's got to be some way of correcting that in terms of the monetary recompense that you get when you transfer your best players.
I think that's true, JP. We've said it that we think our players are undervalued in the game it is. is underrated as well, because I don't think we promote it enough to make it more valuable to the worldwide supporters.
No, there isn't enough, mate. There's not enough done on it, and that's funny enough. I was just on Sunday there at the Hearts game. I was speaking to a guy about that, and I says to him about the way the Scottish game's promoted. You look at how far behind the times the SFA and the SPFL and the way they operate. I mean, we've voted for VAR to come into the league, and for some apparent reason now we need to wait to the World Cup before it's set up. Why? If every club's got it now in the Scottish Premiership, why are we not using it? Like, what's the hold up? I have no idea as to why. When we're seeing decisions being made in games now, that you're going, what the hell are you doing? What? If we had that technology, it wouldn't just help Celtic or Rangers or any other club. It would help the other teams as well, because things are happening. I watched the highlights of the Motherwell and Livingston game. Motherwell's goal, the penalty, was never a penalty, and that was the winning goal in that game. So these things are now they're defining an outcome of the game. It's astonishing. The decision making up here is just totally baffles me. I don't know why.
I mean, VAR's not without its problems, obviously.
No, but it's certainly
I mean,
a massive help, I think, Phillip, in terms of to help referees make a better decision rather than make the decision that's going to cost a specific team.
The point is, JP, that right or wrong, VAR is now an integral part of the game in most serious football competitions.
Yeah.
So why the Scottish authorities are dragging their feet, I don't know.
I don't
we
know
don't know either, because as I said, it was last season this was voted. The clubs all took a vote. The 42 membership. I don't know why. Don't ask me why. First division and other division clubs were allowed to vote on what was going to happen to the Scottish Premier League. It has no bearing on them at all. I don't understand why they were part of that vote. But we understand now there is a membership, as they call it in Scotland now, and all of these clubs represent the SPFL. So therefore, they need to have them involved in any sort of voting that happens throughout the leagues. If you want league reconstruction or things like that to happen, it needs to go to all the clubs and not just the clubs that are wanting the change. But yeah, as I say, you go elsewhere, you go down south, you go to Germany, match day, you get free travel if you show your game pass or whatever it may be, your tickets, or you're allowed to travel in public transport, whether it be trams, buses, trains, or I think it's everything apart from taxi. Here, fans are asked to travel from all over, and they don't really get anything back. In my opinion, they're priced out of a lot of things as well. There's certain games, like this season, Celtic were up against Ross County, and the game was at 3 o'clock on a Saturday, and it wasn't on TV. So unless you were actually going to the Celtic game, if you were in the specific ballot that's ran for that criteria, then you weren't allowed to watch Celtic on the TV. Why Celtic have been playing second fiddle? If you go back to the start of the season, and the first game that's on TV is the team across the water when we are the defending champions. But instead, they thought it was more beneficial to have us play at 4:30 on a Sunday, because that's the time that Sky wanted to put Celtic on the TV. When Celtic, in my opinion, should have been the curtain raiser for the league kicking off, to unveil the flag in front of the Celtic fans against Aberdeen on the Saturday at maybe 12:30, and that wasn't the case. So as I say, the decision making up here needs to change. I think first and foremost before anything else is decided, before we proceed forward. But we're really, really behind the times with quite a lot of it, Phillip.
I think we are behind the time. It definitely, in terms of that, I couldn't believe that the champions weren't the first team to open the season. I think that's crazy. Well, in my opinion, they should be. If Rangers win the league, Hearts win the league, Hamilton win the league, then they should be the curtain raiser. But obviously, the last bit, Phillip, I know you're an author as well for other books. How did you? How does author work? How does writing work, and how did you actually get into being an author?
Oh gosh, yeah, right. Well, it's a long time ago. I've always written, but for quite a long period of my life, I had 5 kids to support, and that does tend to make it more difficult to write. But I started off properly back in the 1990s, late 1980s, and I became a ghostwriter. And I ghost wrote newspaper columns. It's how I met Michael Knighton, the subject of my first book. That was going to be ghostwritten originally, but then it turned into something much better, and I think. Yeah, so that's how it started. And really, I got my lucky break. You know, we talked earlier about people working hard, and I've always worked hard at my writing. I've written and still continue to write a lot of short stories. I've won awards for the short fiction, which I'm really grateful for. But my big break came with the first big book, the visionary book about Michael Knighton and Manchester United. It took 30 years to write because although I'm good friends with him now, we kept falling out about how the book should be put together. And bless him, he would occasionally change the text without letting me know, and I would suddenly discover, and we'd have a row about it, and then we kissed and made up. And eventually, 30 years after starting the book, it came out. And we were lucky to find Pitch Publishing because they're great publishers. I'll give you one example. A few years back, I think it's their best-selling book. It's by a guy called John McAvoy, who was a hard-nosed criminal, a really serious, big-time criminal, who kind of did his time and reformed and discovered that he was good at rowing. He's since become the Ironman champion of Great Britain, but he still has to wear a tag, I think. Anyway, my point is that Pitch published his life story, and Pitch sent a copy of that book, that hopeful story, to all young offenders in prison throughout the UK. And they did that off their own back. So what I'm saying is they've got a social conscience. Mm-hmm. And that's probably why I get away with a lot of my socialist stuff in my books. Why I got away with writing about the Irish Holocaust in the Immortals. Because I felt I can't tell Celtic's story without going back to the origins. And I mean, also, I was contracted to do 100,000 words. I gave them 125. They didn't bat an eyelid, and it's out there. So I'm very lucky.
I can tell you're a hard worker. Just obviously your knowledge and how many books you've done and the detail of the books as well. Obviously, this book that's coming out at the moment, where can you get it, and is it online or is it in stores?
Well, it's if you type in my name, Phillp Vine, Amazon, you'll find copies of the Immortals at a slightly discounted price. It's a fat book, 125,000 words. It's $19.99, but I think you can get it for a few quid cheaper on Amazon. You can order it from any bookshop. I guess, I mean, I was in Cambridge the other day, and I thought I can't even be bothered to look because it's probably not going to be on sale down here. But hopefully it's in the Glasgow bookshops. But it's also word of mouth. Mm-hmm. My previous book about Michael Knighton, I had a famous guy, and all the press wanted to talk to him, so it got lots of publicity. This one, I'm relying on Celtic fans to read it and spread the word, and hopefully enjoy it. You know, I hope it's a page turner. I write in a style that's known as creative non-fiction. In other words, you try to tell the truth, but where you don't actually know what Jock Stein said to Bob Kelly when he was appointed manager, you imagine. You try and get as near the truth as you can, but then you allow yourself a bit of creative license. So that's my style. It's a sort of racy, pacey style, but with controversy with it too.
I think from
has there been any contact with Celtic in order to try and get it sold in the Celtic superstore or anything, Phillip? Or
Yeah, that has, JP. Yeah, but you know, Celtic do things in house.
Yes, and everything goes upstairs to be proofread and.
Yeah, but I mean, they have their own writers, JP, and I know the publishers tried to get it into the Celtic bookstores, but they wouldn't like it because it goes off message. You see, yeah. I mean, I love Celtic. Obviously, you can tell. I hope, but you know that doesn't mean that you can't be a candid friend and say some home truths when they need to be said. And I don't think Celtic like things straying from the official line.
Yeah.
So sadly, it's not. I mean, I would be amazed if a book escapes into one of the Celtic stores, but it's not for want of trying.
I think, but it's true what you say, but that coincides with the fact that we think the club should come out and say more things about certain stuff, and they don't, because they want to be professional, they want to keep it tight-lipped, and they want to be Celtic, and I understand that. So I can get that point of view, because I'm sure Alan Thompson struggled to get his book in as well, but I think I eventually got it in. It could be the case, Phillip, that if I'd imagine it's going to be a very, very good seller, and Celtic see that, and they will take an opportunity on that. I'd like to think so. But it's true, JP, Phillip says, from just talking to him and knowing what's in the book, briefly, I think fans would be interested in that.
Yeah, definitely. It will be a page turner with Celtic fans, that's for sure. Well, I think Celtic fans like a story that goes off track now and again as well. So I think that's going to be a wee eye opener for some as well, because a book like that's it's probably going to be an education to a lot of maybe the younger generation of Celtic fans if they're into reading. And
it's difficult, JP, because I'm trying to write for the general football public, but in the end, I'm writing for Celtic fans.
Yeah.
I mean, really, it's a kind of a long love letter to Celtic. And like all love affairs, you know, you get pissed off sometimes. You have your arguments and your disagreements, and it's all in there, you know. So it's my heart sort of spilled out all over the pages, and yeah, I mean, thank you guys for inviting me. I've had a really good time, and hope I haven't spoken too much, but I did warn you, and I did say please interrupt me. But
no, this was a guest episode about you and about for you, so no, you were free to fire away and speak about what you wanted to speak about. It's been a pleasure speaking to you, Phillip. Obviously, it's good to speak to other Celtic fans and people who've got the same interest as yourself. I know from my obviously experiences, you'll probably remember most of them anyway. And as I say, it's been really good hearing your insight and hearing obviously your background story and what you do. And yeah, thanks for coming on and taking the time with us.
Well, thank you both very much. Yeah, bless you both, and come on, Hoops.
Thanks. Again, Phil, I just echo JP. Thanks for your time, Phillip, and hopefully people read the book. I certainly will. Again, Celtic fans, this will be on YouTube. It'll be on all the platforms. Phillip's book will be on Amazon, as Phillip says, and we'll put all the links and descriptions on when we put on the social media. But again, Phillip, thanks a lot. JP, thanks a lot, and hail, guys. Cheers.
Hail, lads. Thanks. Been a pleasure. Cheers.
Take care, you guys, and stay in touch.
Cheers, Phillip.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Cheers, Phillip. Thank you.
Cheers, Mal. Thank you.